Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of 30-Minute Growth Session, where in 2023, or 2024, I should say, we are focusing on 52 weeks, 52 amazing authors. And I'm joined today by author Kevin Coleman, author of many books, but the one that we're talking about today is Jennifer's Vow. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Lisa. Is it? Sorry, edit this out.
You
But is
can
it
just call me Lisa. It doesn't matter.
Lisa? Yeah, I don't want to be Dr. Lisa or Lisa.
So, how are you today?
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, I'm doing great today. I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
All right. So, we're going to have our authentic conversation about, you, the book. So, why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience a little bit about you, your background?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a Canadian. I live near Toronto on the shore of Lake Ontario. This is my third career as an author. My first career was with Procter and Gamble as an executive, where I actually lived for a number of years in Japan. I lived for a while in Belgium, in the US, and I traveled to 34 countries. And then I was a consultant for 17 years. And as a consultant, I spent a lot of time in India, in Philippines, spent a few months in Korea. So I've bounced around the world a lot, right?
I'm
That's
jealous. You know what? I have a goal of visiting all seven continents, but one of them I'm thinking I'm not going to, which is Antarctica. I'm thinking I'm not going there.
we had a trip booked there and we bailed on it when we actually saw how physically demanding it was. And I'm 71 now, so I thought I'm not sure I'm really up for what it takes to get onto the continent. So
Well, at 50, I don't have what it takes.
along the way, I've also done a lot of different. I've been one of those seekers. So when I was in India, I got deep into Hinduism. When I was in Japan, I studied Zen Buddhism quite a lot. And then I was in Korea, so I got to see their flavor of Buddhism. I've done all kinds of woo-woo things that show up in my books. So I've done ecstatic dancing, and I've done transfiguration circles, and I've done all kinds of meditations, animal spirit meditations. But at heart, I'm a Christian. At heart, if we just talk about faith openly for a minute, I'm a member of the Anglican Church, a warden in our local Anglican church. And that's the faith that I've chosen to believe and practice. I read something by Rumi a few years ago in one of his poems where he said, all paths lead to God. Choose the path which is close to you, and then practice that. Choose to practice that, and then practice it. And so that's what I did at the end of the day.
Having a
About me
path,
as a
right?
faith
I think
person.
so many people are lost. So having a path, right, at least means that you're on track towards the end result, right? But you got to have a
That's right.
path.
You got to have a path. And actually, what he said was it doesn't really matter so much what the path is. Choose the one that's available to you. And then the important thing is to practice it, right?
I
To be,
love it.
be in faith. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how Jennifer's vow came to be.
Jennifer's Vow came to be originally as a short story that I wrote about 10 or 12 years ago, because I was thinking about what's happening with employment, with work as we do automation, because I worked in automation. I saw what was happening. And I thought, what does it mean to have a full-time job? What does it mean to be fully employed? So I wrote a short story called Full Employment about a young man who was hired by an artificial intelligence, who was actually hired by a factory that was run by an artificial intelligence. And his job was to be available if there was a breakdown. So he went where he had no job and he had all his time to himself, and he got a basic government subsistence. It's because there was a government subsistence, but then he got hired, and now his job was that every few months he would get a call. He'd have to go fix the factory, but he got a full-time salary and benefits. And I thought, would that make him feel like he was fully employed? Is that what is employment? Is employment having a salary and benefits, or is an employment actually being busy all day with something to do that's important to you? So I thought, what would that be like to live a life where all your friends envied you because you were fully employed, and yet you really didn't do anything, right? So that's
Nice
how it
job,
started.
right?
That's right. Well, there are jobs like that. Even today, there are jobs like that. Consulting is a little bit like that, you know. Typical
Well, I
consultant.
don't know. I feel like as a healthcare consultant, when I'm on at a client site, I'm working.
Yeah, you're working, but then there are periods between the jobs, right?
Yes. And you know
Yeah,
what? I like that flexibility because as I'm an independent consultant, and so I like to have some time just for me, for my family, just to, practice some of the things that maybe I've allowed to fall by the wayside, but really getting into um alignment with my mission and my journey and who I'm supposed to serve. I can't do that if I'm all over the place, right?
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. As a consultant, I identify with that. So anyway, so with my story, I had written this story. So then I made it into a book. It wasn't a very good book. I wrote it in the third person first, then I wrote it in the first person, and then I didn't like that, so I wrote it again back in the third person again. And then I learned about point of view characters, so I wrote it with point of view characters, but it never published. But the feedback I got was that my character was boring. He was just, he was a lot like me, actually, just boring, just an ordinary, straightforward, took things as they came. So I thought, okay, so there's something wrong with the character. So then I wrote the book about his roommate. VJ is his roommate. And so I thought, well, VJ is a much more interesting character. He's more larger emotional range. He's got more interesting interests. So I wrote the book about VJ. But then VJ went to work in a theater, and in the theater at the will call window was a girl in the next version of the book. She was just described as a girl with red hair and a green dress who was handing out the tickets. No name, nothing else, just a girl. But she didn't write very well, and she wrote in these large, awkward letters, right? So I shared that around. People said, well, VJ needs a love interest. So I thought, well, who's available? I thought, because I didn't want to introduce too many new characters. So I thought, oh, maybe the girl in the will call window. So I called her Jennifer and wrote her in, but then she took over the story. So then I wrote this book, which you've never seen, and no one, I don't think anyone, it's called Vow for a Lifetime. I wrote it and I self-published it. I edited it myself, I did everything myself, and it was terrible. And I got terrible feedback. But people said, well, wait a minute, we invested a whole lot of time at the beginning following Ron, and then we realized he's just a side character. And we want more Jennifer and more VJ and more Black Panther, and we want all of that, right? So I unpublished that book. I just took it off, and you can still see it on Amazon. They never go away on Amazon, but it's still there as an unpublished book. And then I wrote Jennifer's Vow, which is this book. And this time I wrote it, I took all the feedback, and then I hired a professional editor. And the editor really helped me get it into shape. She had me, first of all, she said, too many characters, cut the number of characters in half. She said, throw away all of these chapters. You don't need any of these chapters. She said, but you're missing chapters here. So go away and write some more chapters in the gaps here. And so it was a bit, as an author, it was a bit brutal. But as authors, we need brutal editors. We really do. And then the final Jennifer's Vow came out. And then from then on, I went to write Jennifer's Blessing and Jennifer's Destiny. And the story arc is complete at the end of the three books.
I love it. Well, I will tell you, I've only written one book, Grow With Me. And my journey was one that I started off wanting to write a memoir of my life, right? So I was in 2023 turning 50. And so I had gone through a lot of things from the perspective of being a mother, a single mother with a special needs daughter. And so turning 50 was kind of like I felt like I had arrived because I had transitioned into a woman who realized that in order to grow, she had to become comfortable being uncomfortable. and I wanted to tell my story. And so my first four chapters, I kid you not, I spoke to a like a Zoom platform, and I just spoke and cried and cried and cried and just really released a lot of the things that I was feeling and sharing some things that I had not really told anyone outside of my inner circle, such as the day that I took the 30 Tylenols and decided I was going to end my life because I just thought that I shouldn't be here anymore, right? So that book for me was very healing, but also as I started working with my publisher, it really turned into a motivational book because I'm a motivational speaker. And so I can understand working with the author or the publisher and the editing versions. And right now I'm working on another book. And this time around, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get my chapters laid out, right? I know I have the vision. Like I had this vision of 52 weeks, 52 authors. I have the vision of what the book should be about, and I have really prayed about, cried about the alignment that this book will have as a follow-up book to my first book, but also the impact that it's going to have on the world. And every day I get another sign that I'm moving in the right direction with the book. So I'm excited. But enough about me. Let's get back to Jennifer. So tell us a little bit, and we want everyone to purchase the book. So we don't want to give them all the juicy details about the book. But on the Kindle version, it's about 402 pages. But tell us a little bit about the story. And then I have to ask you, because I was like, what is Gaia? How do you pronounce that?
Oh, Gaia.
Gaia. And what's a Gaia?
So Gaia is the most important, and maybe it didn't come across in the book. I'm not sure. But anyway, Gaia is the concept that Mother Earth is alive, that we're all part of the living earth, right? And Gaia would be the spirit of the living earth. So that there was a popular view for a while, I think it was James Lovelock who put it forward, that Gaia, we could conceive that all of the life forms on Earth are part of a single, even larger organism. Just as, when we walk around, we think there's one of us. There's actually something like 3 billion of us. There's, bacteria and fungi and all sorts of things that inhabit our body along with us and that we need. We all know we need our gut bacteria to keep us healthy. So we're actually a little colony of about 3 billion organisms that walk around. So I said, maybe you could extrapolate that to that maybe the whole earth is one large living thing and that we're just an aspect of that. That's
See,
where you get all the cycles. So
you explained it way better than I would have as the reader. So
so that's Gaia, yeah. So that's Gaia. And Jennifer, so my premise in the book, because every fantasy book has to have a premise. And my premise in the book was that the fact that we've been busy wiring up the earth and we've created all these sensors and cameras and networks. I said, maybe Gaia could wake up. Maybe Gaia has dreamed the world into existence. But now, with all of this nervous system that we've built, Gaia could become aware. She wakes up. And at the same time, in the computer side, these same networks, there's some AI, super AIs that just wake up. We didn't plan them, we didn't build them, we didn't create them, they just arose. And this is a fear in the computing community that what happens if there's AIs that arise that we don't even know they're there, right? They're just
that's
awake.
true.
Yeah, so I thought, what happens if those two things coincide and if they start to work together? And they do in the book, and Jennifer's chosen as the emissary for Gaia on the planet. And she doesn't know that right away. She just knows that weird things are happening to her. She doesn't really realize what she has to do until book 3. But this Black Panther shows up. So on the cover of each of the books, there's always a Black Panther. And the Black Panther becomes her guide, her spirit guide. Now, at the beginning of the story, the broad arc of the story is a redemption story for Jennifer because she begins as a sex worker. Right? She begins earning money one of the hardest ways possible, I think.
America's oldest profession, I heard.
Yes, it is. But it's and I'm really careful when I write the books. I write them for adults. So these are books for adults. They're not young adult, they're just adult books. But I always think about a 14-year-old reading the books, right? So I think, okay, you have to be responsible because a 14-year-old is going to read these books.
You know what? A fun fact, when I was 14, my mother had 3 books lying around that I read: Flowers in the Attic, Petals in the Wind, Let There Be Thorns. And I may have been younger than 14, but she had them and I enjoyed reading, so I read them. So thank you for being, aware that a younger person may read the book. But you know what? These young kids are so much more advanced than you were at their age. I was at that age. So,
Yeah, so I don't worry about them not understanding the book. What I worry about is that right from Jennifer's beginning as a sex worker all the way through the developing relationship, that the books always convey positive messages about human sexuality. They always deal with consent. So I don't know when you read it, I don't know if you noticed, but even Jennifer asks for consent. It's not just the men asking the women for consent. Sometimes the women ask the men, "Are you okay with this? Are you ready for this?" Right? So consent is really important.
two-way
Um,
street, right?
yeah, it is. So consent's important. It's in the book. It's healthy, playful sexuality is all the way through the book. It's not, there's no violent, there's no violent or, and the characters say openly at one point that, it's important that both partners enjoy what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see teenage girls now particularly think maybe they don't have to enjoy it. Maybe it's just for the boys to enjoy it. And it's not. That's just a porn thing that they've seen somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I try to convey that message. Um, and there's the message that Jennifer says, sex is just a natural thing. It's something adults do. She said, but the sacred part is right after sex. She's really most interested, I guess because she was a professional worker. Sex has no magic for her. But that moment afterwards, when you've just been as intimate as two people can be, when you can talk about anything, when you can share anything, she views that as a sacred moment. And she teaches VJ to treasure that. So I think these are all things that are useful. In the sex work, I'm just going to keep on talking about sex for a minute before we move to some of the larger themes. I'm really careful to make sure that sex work is portrayed as not glamorous. It's not dangerous necessarily, but it's portrayed as not glamorous. It's portrayed as a world where you get taken advantage of. So she gets taken, things are stolen from her, things are taken from her. And it's not so easy to escape. She thinks
You
it's
know
easy
what?
to escape, but there's people trying to bring her back.
Yes. In one part of the book, you said that Jennifer woke up one day in her usual torment and she knew exactly what she wanted out of life, right? She wanted a place to live, to be quiet. And that's something that resonated with me because in the morning when I wake up, I'm grateful for having a place to wake up in, that it's quiet and doing the things that I really want to do. And that's what Jennifer said. Only the things that she really wanted to do. But she needed more money.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is all of our stories. No matter what your profession is, you can wake up with a plate, roof over your head, but you got to go to work, and you're always thinking about the more.
Yes, that's right. She does think about the more. And yeah, and then the last, just to finish off the theme I was on, is at the very end when they meet two young girls who are living on the street. Um, is that when it is? No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of another point in a book. There is a point where it goes through what happens when someone gets recruited. Jennifer tells them her story, I think, maybe, of how she was recruited into sex work at 14. And that's right out of, we support Covenant House quite heavily. I don't know if you have, yeah, you have a Covenant House in Chicago.
You know
It's
what? We have
it's
so
a
many health
charity.
systems in Chicago that I can't remember them all.
Yeah, this is one that it's an international organization now, and it supports street teens. Its whole focus is nothing but teenagers on the street. Very, very
Mm.
successful program. So, but it is out of the working with them, they kind of gave me the script for how someone And I just put it down. I thought, let it be a cautionary tale. Adults will read it and think that's interesting, but I hope if a teen reads it, it'll be a cautionary tale. So that kind of deals with all of the sexual themes in the book. And the book isn't primarily about sex by any means.
Right, right. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, it's
But I
just
will
that's
tell you, when I saw chapter 6, the indecent proposal, immediately, remember that movie?
yes.
Yes, I immediately was like, where are we going here?
And it's actually a pretty decent proposal compared to what she's been through, right?
Right.
Yeah. I like to keep my chapter titles a little bit, I don't know,
Like
provoke curiosity.
make you think it's one way, but then it really goes a different
Yeah.
way, which keeps
The
you
other
reading.
thing, yeah, the other theme that's really prevalent in Jennifer's Vow is life as theater. So the epigraph at the beginning was from Shakespeare, where he says all the world's a stage and all the men and women are players. One man may play many roles in his lifetime, right? So in the book, there's a lot. The book takes place a lot in a theater. There's a theater on the cover. You can see it at the top of the cover is the majestic, oh, sorry, the
The Mercury Theater?
Mercury Theater, where they both work. But then also is VJ is told that his job is to be leading a revolution, but he's not a revolutionary leader. He's kind of this whiny person who's got no life experience. He's not really a particularly, right? But they need someone for Jennifer to match up with, as it explains in the plot. So they choose VJ and they say, we'll give VJ this cover story, and then we'll tell Jennifer that she's his guide and mentor. And after a while, they poke around at it, and then VJ does emerge as this powerful, charismatic leader, just because that's the role he was told to play. And over the 3 books, Jennifer keeps in a state of inquiry as to what's my role? What's expected? Why am I getting all of these things from Gaia? What's expected from me? And so she's searching for her role. Wendell Holmes, the theater manager, is clearly playing a role. There's Sally and Greg, who they think Sally and Greg is one kind of thing, and then they realize actually their life is something very different, right? They're not who they thought they were at all. So all the way through the book, it plays with this idea of people living roles, either they've chosen for themselves or someone's assigned them. And to some extent, we all live roles, right? So life as theater was another really important theme.
I like how you bring the words kind of bring the characters to life, but what they were doing in the book. Because there was one scene where there was an overweight businessman, and I was like, I could actually visualize these things happening. And I read a lot. I fly twice a week, and my flight is generally about 3 hours. And so that's when I get in my reading time. And so sometimes I have to be very careful that when I'm reading that I'm not making not making noises, but making sounds like, oh.
Well, you have to admit that was not a glamorous moment, was it?
I had a visual because there was a businessman sitting next to me on a plane who happened to be overweight, and I'm not a small girl myself, and I was like, oh my God.
Well, that's closer to the daily life of a sex worker than having someone really hot and romantic walk in, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's reality, right?
yeah, it's reality. I also talk a little bit about what I really see as the danger of AI, which is we have huge numbers of people out of work, right? We have a growing, restless underclass of underemployed, maybe not completely unemployed, but underemployed, or people who are reliant on government handouts. And in the book, they have this make work scheme, which is called human power, and it will dole out menial jobs for small increases in their weekly supplement. And it's a dehumanizing system. And I think as a society, we haven't dealt yet with the huge dislocations that are coming as people lose their jobs. And we've
Say
got
it
to,
again. Say it again, because people need to hear that a second time. Say it one more time.
yeah, we haven't dealt yet. with the huge dislocations, social dislocations coming as more and more people lose their jobs. A huge proportion of males in North America work as truck drivers, but automated truck driving is on its way. Certainly, all the long distance hauling is already there's plans to eliminate all those drivers. The robotic process automation is a thing which is happening in offices all over North America, and it's displacing clerical workers. So we're going to have this huge body of people who, and yes, they can go into this gig economy where they have 2 or 3 jobs at once, all paying minimum wages. They're flipping burgers and then they're going shuffling over and doing something else. But that's not a satisfying life, and that's not where we want to be. So we have to find a new way to share the wealth. I don't know what the final answer is. I have an answer in book 3, but I don't know if that's really the answer or not.
Well, I will tell you that in my industry, healthcare, in particular, medical coding, we've used a form of AI for years called natural language processing. And so what we're seeing is that the medical record can be fed into a system that can then identify what diagnoses the patient has, what procedures they had done today, and it can do it in a matter of milliseconds. But what has been happening is that we still need a human to review it for accuracy, medical necessity. But I suspect they're going to figure that out, which means the bottom of that profession is going to fall out.
Yes.
And my message has been to those that do that function, you need to get a plan today because the bottom is going to fall out. And are you going to be left behind when it happens?
Yep, absolutely. I agree entirely. And the last 2 themes that come in the book, if I just go, I'm just going through my themes here as we talk about it. The book talks about infidelity and what the cost of infidelity is, with Peter, right? If you remember Peter. And that
the
carries
cost
on
is
too.
the cost. I don't think that when folks set out to have these, I don't know what words that lead up to infidelity, these encounters, they don't realize the price that they're going to pay.
Yeah, they don't. They walk into them driven by hormones or emotions, and suddenly they find they're carrying this thing for the rest of their life, or certainly the rest of their relationship. Yeah, you can't. And secrets. Jennifer always asks for no. I want no secrets, please. And yet she's full of secrets, right?
She don't,
Nothing
but she,
is
cause
revealed.
that's a lot to carry. You think
Yeah,
about all the gentlemen, that she
yeah.
entertained. She knew a lot.
She knew a lot, and she also she kept it secret that she really wanted to escape until VJ found out by accident that she was planning this escape, and then he gave it to her, right? And but in the second book, find there's much darker secrets. You find out that she's estranged from her family. Well, I don't want to tell you all of the darker secrets, but
Right. Don't tell everything. Don't tell everything because they need
but
to buy the book, right?
secrets continue to come out right up until the end of the third book. There's still secrets. So those I think about themes. I try to write books which have a story that you can read as a story, and at the same time give you something to think about when
Mm-hmm.
you finish. Yeah.
Yes. One of the things that as I was going through the book, you talked about first, no secrets between us, right? If something happens that would affect us, we need to talk about it before everybody else does. I think we see that play out, not to get into politics, but we see that play out when individuals are running for office. All their
Yes.
secrets come to light.
Yes. Yes. There's nowhere to hide.
Nowhere, nowhere.
I
So
went.
we are almost out of time, but can you tell our listening, viewing audience where they can get copies of the book so that they can have their own copy?
Yes. Jennifer's Vow. The 3 books are Jennifer's Vow, Jennifer's Blessing, and Jennifer's Destiny, and they all tell one story. It's the arc of Jennifer as she goes from. Oops, I'm sorry. This background. is a bit of a mess. But and there's Jennifer's Destiny.
And there's Jennifer over there in the corner on your background, right?
Jennifer, that's the middle cover in my background. If they would like a free copy of Jennifer's Vow by ebook, then just drop us a note at admin@kevincolemanauthor.com. Maybe we could put that somewhere, but admin@kevincolemanauthor.com. And my assistant Amanda will be happy to send you a coupon for a free book that will work for any of the platforms. Otherwise, you can find the books on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble as a Nook book, on Apple Books, any of the ebook platforms. Amazon also has the book in large print edition, and there's an audio book. So you can find the book in all sorts of formats. The second one is being recorded as an audio book now. So that's where to look. Any platform that you use, Kobo, Nook, Kindle, Apple Books.
Yes, everywhere. You definitely have wide distribution of the book. That's one of the things I've been thinking about is, all right, I have this deadline that I'm going to record the audio version of my book. So you have inspired me to get my stuff together so I can do that. But I would imagine speaking these words from an audiobook perspective is quite interesting. And I was thinking if I was the one that did it, I would be very animated.
I have actually a lovely actress in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who reads my books. And she's very accomplished, and she really does bring the characters to life.
Yeah, so I didn't, I obviously didn't have the audiobook, but I can hear it. I can hear the words from the words on the pages. And I wonder how many Jennifers there are out there today. It's got to be a lot.
There'll be a lot, yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, listen, our time is up. I want to thank you so much for coming on to tell us more about Jennifer's Vow. Everyone, please purchase your copy of the book. Trust me. Sitting on the beach with your favorite beverage of choice. I think you'll find it to be a very juicy read, but also you'll learn some things that you didn't know. Because I learned some things that I didn't know, and I was like, whoa. So when I am reading, reflecting, highlighting, just kind of growing as I'm reading the book, but I'm also thinking about some perspectives that I may have had, especially about the oldest profession in America. Thinking about some perspectives that I had, some biases that I had, that I really started to think about as I was, combing through the pages on the airplane. So thank you so much for coming to tell us about your story. And everyone, this has been another episode of 30-Minute Growth Session, 52 authors, 52 weeks. Until next time.
Thank you, Lisa.